Ahoy, folks! So, as we all know now, a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Direct was just announced for Wednesday, June 22nd, just a couple of days from now. This may not be the general Direct that everyone wanted, but as a Xenoblade fan, I'm excited. So, I have brought on fellow Xenoblade fan, TJ, and we're going to talk about some predictions and what we want to see, hope to see, expect to see. Actually, speaking of expect to see, it's probably out by this point, but I also have a video going over exact expectations set for this Direct, because it's been a while since we have a game-specific Direct. So, make sure to check that out too. Anyway, now let's actually talk about predictions and all. But first off, TJ, were you expecting a Direct for this game specifically? Because admittedly, I wasn't.
I don't think I was. I mean, in all honesty, to me, I guess it makes sense because I'm pretty sure. I think shy of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, they've pretty much done. They did one for X and they did one for 2. So it wasn't anywhere in my headspace. I just wasn't thinking about it. But I'm not all too surprised at this point. They have shown like practically everything on Twitter just over time. So I mean, I don't know. Hopefully this isn't too redundant with that information, but
yeah,
I'm not too surprised, I guess, really thinking into it.
That's exactly why I am surprised, though, because unlike the past two for X and 2, Nintendo has a much larger social media presence now compared to this. Not that they didn't before, but, I mean, they have the Xenoblade-specific Twitter account in Japan, but that's been tweeting, like, once every day for the last, like, 4 to 6 weeks now. There's a lot of info on the game. We've done several weekly roundups on just Xenoblade stuff. So I'm kind of surprised that there's a specific Direct coming for the game that may have more info than just those, honestly. And sure, the English social media accounts haven't posted every single tweet that the Japanese one did, but even still, I mean, I think it's surprising that we're still doing this. I think it's a good thing. It's a good surprise because people that don't keep up with social media will still get to see a lot of the info. But that begs the first question of this before we get into like the specific predictions. Do you think this is going to have a lot of like new, potentially spoilery info, or is it just going to be like of the 20 minutes, maybe 15 of it is just regurgitating the same info from like the last 2 months of Twitter?
I definitely think there's going to be some overlap. I'm almost certain of that. There's no way you can, I mean, even if they like go more in depth on the combat systems, there's no way there's not going to be overlap there.
Yeah.
So I definitely think I'm hoping that it's not like half of it is recap. That hopefully at least like a good half of it is like new stuff. Because like for example, I mean, I know they've talked about like the Ouroboros transformations and stuff, but like very, very scarcely compared to everything else. So
That's
like
true.
they could actually address that, and that would be like way more details on a combat system we really don't know anything about versus something else. I'm hoping we get a lot more like that, where it's we see stuff, but then we also like get more details on that, the stuff we haven't seen.
Yeah, especially since this will essentially function as a really long overview trailer. That's basically what the game-specific Directs are, in place of an overview trailer. I have a really strong feeling that a good, maybe at least 1/3 of this is going to be focused on breaking down everything about the battle systems. The way, like, the way the arts work, the way, like, changing classes works, the way the Ouroboros transformations work, and chain attacks, and every little intricacy without being a guide. I think it's gonna go over each of those, and then we'll be able to see, is it as overwhelming as Xenoblade 2, or not, in terms of all the different systems to keep track of. Man, I was looking back at that, the Xenoblade 2 Direct, and I got overwhelmed all over again, looking at everything to keep track of for those blades and everything. And that actually leads me to, I guess it's kind of a prediction. We've already seen a fair amount of the 2 different nations in Xenoblade 3 essentially make up your Xenoblade 1 nation, your Xenoblade 2 nation. May or may not have been inspired by the fans of the games being so divisive, I don't know. But I think, haven't they already given a tease that even like the simple, like, not simple, but like even the core gameplay mechanics will differ depending on if you're playing which region the character comes from. So like I think yeah. So I was gonna say, like, if that's the case, do you think we'll even see like a detailed breakdown to how similar those might be from their original games?
I think it's possible. I don't think they'd like spend a lot of time on it, but I definitely think they'd make the comparison point with like how the systems work, because one is cooldown and one sort of like recharge. I guess would be a good way of wording it. So I definitely think that they'll poke at it, but I really don't think they'll like spend a lot of time making the comparison.
Right.
Because they still have their own stuff to kind of focus on.
That's true. But that does seem to be the case though, right? Like it's not just the lands inspired by the two games, like even the characters from those lands gameplay wise look too, right? Like I think one of the characters is a blade, right?
She seems to be, yes. I mean, like I said, there's some weird like blade lore, so it doesn't look like she inherently has like a driver.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a little complicated to measure that. But like, yeah, for example, like they're different races from their games. And then in like the gameplay, you have like the Xenoblade 1 style characters doing like a cooldown system for their arts, so they charge over time. And then the Xenoblade 2 style characters do like the auto attack recharge system.
I think that's really interesting though, because it means obviously the people that maybe only played one Xenoblade over the other, they're immediately gonna, or more likely to click with characters from that region representing that game more than the other, potentially at least.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Given this game, it seems like you get all the main party like at or around the same time. I mean, it seems like that's going to be a key thing here of the two different nations. So it seems like that feeling of connectivity to, or relating back to the original game they may come from or that you may know, that'll be helpful here. Meaning people that played both Xenoblade games should be completely in their comfort zone. Well, that was my first initial, I guess, big prediction there with Battle. Do you have do you have a specific prediction you wanna bring up next?
Maybe not so much a prediction, but definitely a hope.
Yeah.
I'd really like if they show more about like that crafting system. I know they showed like gem crafting a little bit in like I think one post.
Yeah.
They just kind of like went out and then went into the air. I'd really like to like see more details about how the gem crafting system works, as well as like how you equip them, your other equipment and stuff like that. Sort of how you work towards making builds. Because like in Xenoblade 1, it's definitely more involved on the specific character, where you have all the armor pieces and then you have all the gems to slot in, and that's how you kind of help cultivate the build, followed by setting arts. Whereas Xenoblade 2 is more like you want to focus on build, like how each character's blade combinations work and sort of how that shapes their character, and then the accessories kind of accent that playstyle. So I'm really interested to sort of see how they handle it. How much focus on like equipment on a per character basis it is, because I know you can still swap their classes, so it might still just be like an accent to whatever class you choose, instead of making sure all the gems properly accommodated. So I'm really curious to see like how all of the different armor pieces kind of work together, and the gem crafting works together with that to help you make more in-depth and more strategize your builds better, basically.
Yeah, strategizing your build seems really important here, especially since you can change the character classes. Now, I imagine you'd have some difficulty if you make like everyone the same class, which I feel like they may not stop you from doing, but they may also balance it out where like I could also see them balancing it out where like you have to have all these different classes. You could just swap which character is which I guess I wouldn't. Now that I say that, I don't really see what the benefit of swapping them would be then, if you can't have like three characters being the same thing if you want, and then everyone else is just a healer or something like. They seem like they really want you to play around with strategy and setting up these characters the way you want them to, whether they hail from a gameplay system similar to 2 or similar to 1. There's a lot of extra customization you could do, including the gem crafting, the customization. It seems like they want you to be able to use these characters as best as you can the way you want to. And
Yeah.
I know I need to stress, I haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I know you and I talked about that a while back, the amount of stuff these characters can do, and it starts to feel closer to that as well, doesn't it? You can correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think it's a bit complicated for Xenoblade Chronicles X because they do like class divisions, and then the class division skills are based on weapons, which you can then unlock the weapons and mix them. So I don't know if I'd say it's like quite that intensive.
Okay.
Because you can do some really messed up stuff, not to mention the class balancing is questionable, but whatever. So I definitely think it'll be more freeform, or at least I'm hoping it'll be more freeform, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine it'll be quite that free.
That's fair. So yeah, you can't make every single person use the origami, for example, maybe at the same time. That might be a bit much.
I mean, I would hope that'd be cool. It'd be not a great class balancing,
No.
but you know, it'd be fun if nothing else. Run the game with 6 tanks.
Oh man, hard mode. Alright. That would be a lot of fun. I have a question for you in the form of a prediction. I have a feeling they're gonna spoil, in quotes, the first third of the game here. Because trailers for Xenoblade 1 and 2, back in the day, kinda did that. Not fully giving you the context for everything, of course, but they showed a bit more than they should have for the whole first third of the game. And you and I talked before about how, like, big RPGs like this, it makes more sense to divide them into, like, 3 arcs, or, like, thirds. So,
Yeah.
you know, rather than spoiling half the game, or even the whole game, they'll only really give you the first third in most of the marketing. But they could still spoil a fair amount. Do you think they'll do that here, of spoiling the first third of the game? Because I genuinely think they'll push it a little too far. They won't spoil everything, of course, but, like, officially confirming Melia and Nia, for example, which, it's been obvious, but I feel like they'll go as far as showing their actual faces, when that's been something they've been trying to hide thus far, and then it'll feel like spoilers. But what do you think?
I mean, personally, I'd like to think they wouldn't, not in like
hope.
this trailer. Because I feel like, I mean, they're gonna have like a release trailer as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like that one, if it doesn't here, it will more than likely do it in that. But I mean, at least a release trailer is easier to avoid at that point. But I'd like to think that like they'll probably focus more on the game itself rather than like the story stuff. I'd really like to see some, maybe get like hints about like the flutes or something, or Ouroboros, or just something regarding those, because those have also been kind of vague.
Yeah.
Definitely hinted at, and I mean, everybody hates Ouroboros for some reason, but really don't know why. But I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of like drop that hard plot like on the spot.
Oh,
but
man.
I kind of hope they don't, and they'd save it for more like a release trailer.
Yeah, because I know so many people want to go into this game like as unspoiled as possible. They want to go in as like blind to the game, and especially since this is your culmination of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2. If you love both of those games, this is probably going to be like really, really big with its story. It would be a letdown if it wasn't, to be honest. And I totally understand. I'm kind of with people on not wanting to be spoiled there. So I'm really hoping anything they show, like story-wise, is stuff you learn in like maybe the first like 6 hours of gameplay. Like, I think that's fair game, and it won't be that bad. Because, you know, a lot of people will reach that in day one. Some people won't reach that for like a week or more, but like, at least you're not spoiling, you know, third arc of the game, big teasing, big reveal, like, uh-oh, don't do that.
You're not 20 hours in already knowing what's going on.
Please no. So, here's a fun, kind of related question before I let you go into more of your predictions and such. Do you think they'll show or tease more returning characters? I know it's implied to be like hundreds of years later, so any of the humans, yeah, they probably won't be there. So, sorry, Shulk's probably long gone at this point. But do you think we'll see any other like returning characters, like any other like Nopon or other closer to immortal beings from either game?
I think that's tough. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I'd like to feel like they'll keep it a bit more contained. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a notable Machina or two.
That's true.
Or I guess on Xenoblade 2's end, maybe a Blade Eater or two. Maybe a Blade, because they can just be reforged
That's
in a
true.
sense. But I'd like to think that they're not just gonna like start like dropping a bunch, and they want to keep it more scarce so that the stakes are higher towards the specific characters like Melia and Nia.
That's true.
Keep those stakes more contained to them, and then leave like the people around them, you know, loosely from each world, but not like all too important.
It would make a lot of sense, honestly, and it would be nice to have some other of those characters return, but not as plot important. Like we're not gonna get a glimpse of all of the classic party members from both games appearing here. Like that's not maybe flashbacks for those characters, but in the game,
flashbacks are fair game.
not in this direct. No,
Yeah,
that's getting more into actual game stuff. But yeah, I think in this direct, because I can see them teasing like, for example, the other Hyantia, like Melia, like any other surviving ones potentially. That were notable characters, potentially, being there, but only characters that were close to the ones we already know of, So, I'll let you go next on any other hopes and predictions.
I think I only really had one other hope, I guess, or I guess maybe thought. It does still branch a bit more on like you talking about like showing maybe a bit more of the story than not.
Right.
And maybe something along the lines of like a hint towards each side's motive in some sense, because we know they exist and we know they're fighting each other, but they're also fighting Ouroboros, but we don't really know like what half the reason for anything happening is. So we know like the main cast is fighting for, I think, survival and some level of balance in the world, but I mean, that doesn't explain why anyone else is doing anything.
Well, normally, I would say we can learn lore like that in like, you know, the introduction to the game, like the opening moments of the game have kind of some lore backdrops to set up the world and all. And normally that would make sense. And you could even have that in the direct. I mean, I think 2 did that. It was like, here's this world, and humanity had to flee, and now they're on the backs of Titans. And it's like a minute long, but it gave you the backstory.
Yeah,
I almost feel like, despite what I say, I almost feel like they won't do that here, because I think I feel that part of the story is going to be the main party discovering why they're even fighting each other. And if they just told that to us in the introduction to the game, I don't think that'll be as captivating then. I could be wrong, but
yeah, no, I mean, I get you. That does make a lot of sense. It definitely helps more establish them as a party, sort of realize why, or create conflict in forming it to begin with, which it would be conflict for the party still, but not so much so for the player.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we don't want this to be a game where the player knows more than the characters the whole time, or for a significant amount of time, because you start to lose investment then most times, for a game like this at least. I do think we will learn more about like some of the backstory to this world. Like, you are right, like I think it makes sense to do that in this direct. This is the big blowout direct, your big overview trailer where you should have a lot of info. This is the place to do some of that. But I don't think we'll learn as much as we hope in that on that specifically.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I got one last thing that I have listed here. If you have more afterwards, that's fine. You can go through all of this. But my last thing here is the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Direct back in 2017 announced the expansion pass, which primarily was Torn of the Golden Country. That whole basically extra game. And additional, content updates to Xenoblade Chronicles. Do you think this will have something similar? Do you think we'll see at the end of this direct the announcement of some sort of expansion pass, some sort of update to the game, or a series of updates to the game coming over the next year that will give us even more, including, like, I don't know, like extra costumes, extra side quests, and then, of course, more story.
I mean, I think if the game is as done as people think it is and are saying it is, I could honestly see that.
Mm-hmm.
It would make a lot of sense. I mean, if it's really as done as it sounds, then what have they been poking at in the meantime, other than bug fixes and whatnot? It definitely adds a bit extra. In terms of, like, I guess a added on story that really comes down to how extra they want the story to be, if they're looking to wrap it up this time around, or maybe they are and they just do what Xenoblade 2 does and made like another prequel expansion to explain some other things they didn't get to in the game.
That's actually what I'm thinking. Like, what if it's, and this is a big reach here, what if it's not one extra story but two, spaced out maybe like 6 months apart, and those extra stories are the prequels about making those countries. You play as Melia in one, you play as Nia in the other. And that would then add to whatever we learn in the game about these characters, how they came to be the leaders of these respective countries, and how the countries came to be. And it would add even more context to what we would already, presumably, be getting in the game. And let us also see, instead of flashbacks, like I mentioned, let us see maybe what happens to some of those earlier cast members that everyone comes to know and love.
That's true. I mean, hopefully they all, died
peacefully
of the old age and peacefully after their long journeys. That would be the ideal scenario.
It would be.
It's been a couple hundred years, just, died of old age and happiness.
Oh man, please.
Hopefully there's no need for an explanation on it.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing I could see from this. I can see the announcement of an expansion, just like we had for 2. We won't get many details other than it'll have costumes, it'll have side quests, it'll have some extra content, and then of course it will have new story stuff.
I could definitely at least see like some kind of bonus. Here's, even if it's not like a paid DLC, like we have content updates coming, here's like a bonus EX boss, like how they added like Elma and Shulk and Fiora to Xenoblade 2.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Like something at least, even if it's not paid, like one of those, here's some fun cameo fights or a super boss or two that will come out after the game comes out, or maybe some kind of retention rate or something at least, even if not a paid DLC.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think with how successful Xenoblade has gone on to become, I mean, the way we're seeing them promote 3, this is being treated like one of Nintendo's like big core IPs now, and it's actually really exciting.
It is,
and it getting this focus with the Direct. They've done it in the past, but something about this one just feels more exciting to me, which is why I expressed being worried about the spoilers. But I think there will be some big things here, and I think overall, it's something to be excited for.
Oh, for sure.
Rather than worried about that they might spoil too much.
I mean, you just hit that mute button and then keep like it in your peripherals and wait until it's done. Try not to think about it.
Alrighty. Well, any final thoughts here before we close out our nice predictions discussion?
I don't think I have any. It'll be fun to see the game soon. Hopefully not too much of the game, but at the same time.
This is longer. This is longer than the Xenoblade 2 Direct was. Xenoblade 2 Direct was about like 15 minutes. This is 20. Or roughly 20, according to the tweet. So there might be more.
That's an extra 5 minutes for gameplay.
Hopefully. Alright, well I think that'll close out this nice predictions discussion for the Xenoblade 3 Direct. But what are some things you guys want to see from it? Especially if you guys are like really big Xenoblade fans and loved all the games before. What are some things you hope to see, whether it's from those games brought in here or just in the Direct in general? Is there something you've been really waiting to know about Xenoblade 3? Let us know your thoughts down below, and any other hopes and predictions you have. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for plenty more on Xenoblade, because we're gonna be back covering this direct, that's for sure. It should be fun. But otherwise, we'll see you all next time. Farewell.